It's an honor to be with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity to come meet the community a little bit more deeply and to talk about UNICC, the United Nations International Computing Center. It's a mouthful. I want to talk a little bit high level about um, who we are, how we operate, um, what is UNICC OSPO, why we do what we do, a little bit about the different things that we do. And hopefully there's some opportunities for knowledge sharing, for considerations on um, how to grow, how to tackle some challenges or opportunities that we have. Um, so it's kind of two parts. You can learn about us, and if something's interesting and you're a non-for-profit entity, then potentially there's a way to work together. And if it's more on the open source side of things, where it's more like collaboration, internship, hackathon, then we can maybe explore that too. High level, who we are, the OSPO team. There's me. My formal title is Head of Digital Public Solutions. Um, that also means I head the OSPO in UNICC because there's a direct connection in how UNICC serves for public solutions and our work around open source. So institutionalizing open source is really a key focus. And I've got a couple team members who work with me. Most folks are based out of Valencia, Spain, because that's where a big group of our core technologists are physically sitting. I'll explain more about locations in a little bit. Who are we? We are a strategic partner. We provide digital foundations, which is essentially core aspects of computing services and consultative services. We were built to serve the UN system, governments, not-for-profit, academic institutions, as long as they're a not-for-profit entity. We've been around for 55 years. We were created by a General Assembly resolution to share solutions and to scale solutions. So the constructs of digital public infrastructure, digital public goods, open source based solutions, productization, those are all really kind of key concepts behind why UNICC was created in the context of shareability, scalability, replication, lowering the barrier to access resources. And to date, we have over 100 different clients and partner organizations. So we're not available to everyone. We have to have mutual interest, which is really UNICC ourselves as a non-for-profit, being that we're a UN entity. And the mutual interest part is really important, aligning our work towards serving the Sustainable Development Goals. We offer many different types of services, digital solutions, products, from a wide catalog of capabilities, which I'll get into in just a little while. And we have 5 kind of brick and mortar locations, if you will, and then people located working across the globe as well. Broadly, our services are kind of encompassed by this strategic framework. We'll get into the details of specific services a little bit later, but high level, you could think of us like a cloud specialist, meaning we offer the traditional compute services for many, many years. In fact, that's why UNICC was created, is around sharing a mainframe computer 55 years ago. So we've been really infrastructure scalability experts for a very long time. But that's changed over the years. We provide key brokering services to all of the major private sector hyperscalers. But because UNICC is non-for-profit, we've got pretty good at FinOps and around supporting cloud operations for our clients. So that's one of the core pillars. And then most recently, and I'll get into this in a product use case a little bit later, UNICC implemented something called UNIQCloud, which is our own OpenStack-based cloud. And it has really strong cybersecurity controls around it. So it's built to serve our client base, especially around privacy or specific type of computing that maybe more have needs of a sovereign nature. So I mentioned cybersecurity is attached to that private cloud, but cybersecurity is kind of a very broad portfolio of capabilities as well. Operational security, security governance, and security advisory are all part of our general capabilities. And there's a variety of different types of services that you can invoke across those broad pillars. Data and AI services is also something, especially data services, we've been doing for a long time. AI services have bloomed, I think, in the past 7 years or so, 6, 7 years. Our data governance services and visualization we've been doing for quite some time. Now we're getting much more into supporting organizations to make use of frontier AI solutions and working on building out UNICC's AI factory and keeping it consistent and relevant for the very, very quickly changing landscape. So the core compute services with those strong cybersecurity foundations are now being built up with robust AI capabilities. And there's a variety of other different types of solutions we provide. The digital tools and platforms is more in the digital public infrastructure, digital public goods, open source based products kind of scenario. We also operate a lot of the kind of large SaaS products. So things like being a center of excellence for ServiceNow and Salesforce and some of the other large or widely used tools of the system. And around all of that is insights, expertise, and training. So being a kind of training hub or access to training also means hands-on learning and training during deployment and handover of solutions, or sometimes creating specialized training programs that incorporate kind of the book learning or expert-led learning along with hands-on training and empowerment. This is a very deep look at all of UNICC services. I mean, actually, it's quite a lot bigger than this because we have a 70 or 80 page service catalog that lists everything in all the details, but it's like drilling down a little bit further into the details of the services. But very often for productization, capabilities across all of these portfolios are integrated for the way that we deliver in the context of digital public goods deployed within the cloud environments and security services to be able to make sure that we can do the diligence and governance around that. I wanted to provide an example of one product. Now we have a portfolio of many different products that UNICC guides and operates either on behalf of clients that we serve, right? So building DPGs on behalf of some other UN entities or on behalf of other constituents, and then kind of handing that over. Or there's core products that UNICC scales. So one of these core UNICC products that's built for scalability is UNIQCloud, which is that OpenStack cloud that I mentioned. It's built on OpenStack and Ubuntu, and it really helps from a digital sovereignty point of view. UNICC and many of the clients we work with enjoys immunities, and so this infrastructure is covered by privileges and immunities because it's sitting in UN territory and because it's managed by UN staff. So when we consider aspects of sovereignty and ownership and data residency, this is of interest for many, many entities that we work with, whether they have challenges to access compute that adheres to the standards that they need, or whether it's more about being able to access cost-effective solutions, cloud solutions, or whether it's being able to have UN personnel helping them with managing their workloads. There's a variety and a mix of all different reasons why clients come to UNICC for cloud services broadly, and then as a subset of that, UNIQCloud. High level, what it is. It's really, as mentioned, let's say the governance framework means that it has a kind of shielded network around it. I mentioned that we're building up our AI factory capabilities. So it's a constantly changing landscape, but it allows access to MCP capabilities, and it allows access to GPU capabilities. And will continue to evolve according to the needs of our client base. Um, it supports ethical frameworks. So some of the things that we're working on now, especially with some of the large model hosts or creators, is to work on negotiating very specific terms and conditions for the use of our community, because we have certain specific sensitivities about data retention, for example, and um, because we want to be able to have more control in certain cases. So working with entities on having the models and the weights in order to support better tailoring or stronger tailoring. And we can, in this case, within this context, train models without exposing sensitive UN data. Thought I'd talk a high level about UNIQCloud, like what is the underlying environment? There we go. So not to go into like every single little box and every detail, but just to say that we built this along with a really well-known company, Canonical, because UNICC before now we enjoy the benefits of a strong partnership and knowledge transfer, and now we're operating ourselves. But we also had to learn what to do in this process, albeit we have some strong cloud professionals in our team. So we worked with them to build up the environments and to be able to autonomously run them. And we did so specific strong security and access policies, and trying to ensure that we can give clients an environment that really supports the kind of privileges and immunities and least privilege access constructs. I'll talk a little bit more about our work in digital public solutions. So as mentioned, we've been working for a long time on compute and really building up our portfolio of services, as I showed earlier, across many areas that our client base requested or facilitated working with us together. So it means that not only are we an implementation and scaling partner building solutions, but we've become especially a technical advisory entity. So if our client comes and says, well, we want to build this digital public good, digital public solution, we can help canvas for which existing open source could serve as a basis. And then how do we leverage that, combine open source solutions, build together, collaborate with communities in order to be able to build solutions. So I don't have this in the slides, but another key example of this is working with Open Wallet Foundation on a variety of different solutions for digital identity. So UNICC is a digital identity partner scaling digital ID for the UN system. And in that case, we use a variety of projects from Open Wallet Foundation, and we also have built our own code around those solutions in order to productize it or customize it for the needs of our community. And as we go along this, we built a few other solutions, but we iterate on the solutions, we reuse them. So to say these kind of DPI-esque solutions, and we reused that and worked with UNDP and the country of Malawi to build their digital wallet and verifiable credentials. And so, it's kind of this collaborative aspect in terms of looking at how to leverage existing fitting open source projects, create the right basis of collaboration, the right basis of partnerships, and then helping scale and fit for purpose. And so, for us, it's really important to enable institutions to scale public services effectively. And a lot of times that looks like UNICC being a lead implementer. Sometimes we strongly support the building process or reframing process in the context of digital public infrastructure or key health DPI, or we help evolve existing investments and help reframe them or modernize them for stronger interoperability and bring in a variety of different open solutions to support that path. Not sure if you're familiar, but UNDP's Smile solution in Indonesia is another use case for this. So can only fit so many slides in a slide deck, and I didn't bring deep details on each of the use cases, but those that both for UNDP Malawi and UNDP Indonesia for Smile are publicly available. So can have a look at quite interesting journeys that the countries took along with UNDP and UNICC as a technology partner. So a lot of this is just to explain that UNICC is really that tech builder meets sector expert, because we have for a long time been really accustomed to working with government, nonprofit, UN entity, that kind of institutional framework. And our core is reusing smart, because the idea that UNICC was built on is to be able to scale smartly and to share and to reuse, and thus be better situated to support scaling, whether it be replication or whether it be a central collaboration and sort of everyone using the same solution. For a long time, we've been really open source driven. I think in the beginning, it wasn't so much about the words digital sovereignty, but it was much more about transferability, especially when we were building, for example, for a UN entity that needed to then transfer the solutions that we were building into a country, into their data center. Open source was one of the most fluid ways for us to be able to empower and to do this kind of transferability. And so that kind of grew into now what we know is DPI and digital public goods, but UNICC has been taking that approach for quite some time just because of the context in which we work. And many UN organizations that are working in technology or working in supporting technology scaling for their specific mandate are looking at that in the context of their mandate. UNICC's mandate is technology to a certain extent, right? Is shareable technology for the community that we serve. So for that reason, our entire organization is built of technologists. We're not necessarily those policy experts. We're not necessarily child protection experts or agricultural experts. We're technology experts. And over time, we've got some good acumen around the programming of the UN system, but we're really, really focused on designing the solution side of things and helping to build solutions that scale and that last. Cybersecurity is kind of by default for us, at least those strong recommendations in the context of where we work, because UNICC is a kind of cybersecurity hub of the UN system. And it's something that we feel quite strongly about in terms of what responsibility means, at least education around cybersecurity, being able to actually support maturity and execution of strong cybersecurity architecture, controls, operations, etc. So I'll talk briefly about the OSPO. High level, what we do. We're really a center of excellence, and it helps for UNICC to understand better how we interact with open source assets and with open source communities. So what we do in UNICC is really foster UNICC projects becoming open source. Now, we don't have that much yet. The OSPO as a construct is fairly new. And open source for UNICC also involves discussing and agreeing with our end clients. So it's not as straightforward as maybe some other for-profit organizations or non-UN organizations, but nonetheless, it is a strong reason for what we do. And creation or maturation of the policies and helping wide understanding of what's really needed to prepare for assets to be open source. And especially because UNICC is non-for-profit, we operate with a zero-based budget. So looking at the sustainability of open source projects, right? Who's the maintainer? Where does the funding come from to help maintain that project? How is the client interacting, or how are our clients interacting, or how is this supporting the greater good within the UN community or towards the SDGs? So lots of aspects to answer in that process, and it's not meant to be prohibitive. It's meant to really foster understanding and work within UNICC's context. Around policies, governance for us is much more about awareness at this point than it is about guardrails, because we are still rather new. We have really I think, great tooling around DevSecOps and a lot of really open source enthusiastic technologists across UNICC, but how we all agree or how we all understand things can be a bit different. So it's good that we have policy in place and that we can rely on that and leverage the community to be able to mature that, to be able to adapt it based on their wisdom and inputs. We also look at, especially when we want to support clients or when we want to build a product for clients that would leverage open source or a project that would become open source for the client, we look at all of the licensing requirements and practices around that. And then advocacy. So sharing time with you in this type of forum to be able to talk together about what UNICC does, to listen to folks I haven't met yet talk about what you do or what you think about that, develop new partnerships. That often is part of how we look at licensing as well, is what are, partnerships or collaborations with project owners. How do we foster that collaboration? How do we look for mutual wins and try to work in an aligned direction? And for us, this equates to UNICC continuing our work really and using open source as a strategic business asset. It helps us grow that work in support of digital sovereignty for the clients that we serve, or if not digital sovereignty in such a strong sense, at least providing more options and a stronger sense of ownership, more transferability, flexibility. Certainly right now, I don't mean to say that open source is less expensive, but license costs can also be challenging, and changing conditions around license costs can be very difficult, specifically when we have budgetary challenges. So open source somehow helps us navigate some of these aspects. And our work in public solutions, really, we want to make sure that we offer safeguarded and transparent options. So open source is part of that path. Why do we focus on it? So probably you might have heard of the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact. So UNICC is a UN entity. We look to such type of advice and guiding documents from the member states. And so as the GDC really advocates for open source infrastructure, bridging digital divide, equity, accessibility, that these are all key aspects for why UNICC would foster that for the community that we serve or continue. I mean, I think even before the Global Digital Compact, UNICC was making good use of open source and looking at collaboration and partnerships. But we do this maybe more strongly now, more organized in the formation of the OSPO and in a way that fosters our organization to have some kind of structure around open source collaboration. It also helps us set some kind of standards for scale. So Digital Public Goods Alliance has done a pretty good job of kind of outlining some specifications that make a lot of sense to us. So we're part of the Digital Public Goods Alliance. But and same thing to a certain extent with the DPI safeguards and the indicators. And so, open source is a kind of construct around both of those guidelines or specifications is one of the reasons that UNICC really focuses on open source, because it's more of an investment or a standard for scale. AI frontier, I think probably just to say it shortly, transparency is really important for equitability, understanding, and a variety of other different reasons. So it's a good focus and a good goal. Operational excellence. I mentioned this before, I think, in the cost constructs, especially when we look at shared solutions, and then especially creating a kind of center of excellence around specific products or shared solutions. That's where some of this cost benefit analysis around open source can really be an accelerator, because building competency around open solutions on let's take the UN system for example, in every single UN entity uniquely. Well, that would be kind of redundant, and at the same time, probably not very practical. Um, and reuse of solutions is really in focus. So, UNICC being this kind of center of excellence of a number of things can be an interesting place for partners within the UN system to come together and to collaborate, to be able to make benefit of reusable components and open source solutions. So that's a really, it creates a more efficient operating model, more financial predictability. Um, and so it's been something that's a kind of longstanding pillar of why UNICC exists, but is only more at the forefront for the future. And our Code Collaboration Center, which I think is pretty exciting. It was launched about a year ago, opensource.unicc.org. You can also link that from opensource.un.org, which is the official main page of Open Source United. But UNICC operates a GitLab environment, which is actually the functional code collaboration center or kind of central quarters within the UN system. And we're working to encourage more UN organizations to bring their open source projects, and it's going pretty well. We have a couple really important projects in there, and we have more clients that have joined this kind of central collaboration space. And so we're looking forward to having it build and build over the years. High level, our objectives. A bit of it was covered, I suppose, in earlier slides, but just to summarize, we help guide open source strategy. We don't necessarily set the strategy because this is for the organization as a whole to provide inputs around, but we help bring that information together, bring folks together, and support our senior leadership in setting strategy, especially as it pertains to open source. We work in policy evolution. The OSPO was a key collaborator or key convener in terms of bringing together the open source policy for UNICC. And then just general operational maturity. We want to help folks understand how to leverage open source, where to go, what to do if they need advice. And in that, we want to enable the organizational learning and development as a part of operational maturity and as a part of open source evangelism for the organization to understand it and to be able to consider what it means for each person, what it means for their work, what it means for UNICC as an organization, and what it means for our clients. And I would think actually in reverse order, what does it mean for the clients that we serve and the work, especially of the UN system, because we are a UN entity ourselves. And then another big one is around productization. So moving more quickly towards productization. UNICC has been a product-oriented organization for a number of years, but our mean time to be able to bring products to our clients is accelerated with the work of the OSPO across all of our different capabilities and divisions. So creation or fostering of strategic partnerships and outreach, working on overall strategy and positioning within UNICC, working with the clients, understanding landscape analysis of needs, how to fit a number of things together to make building something relevant, especially in the context of cost recovery or nonprofit. We can't build products for no consumer. So we need to make sure that what we're building towards is something for. Generally speaking, management and agile governance of products. So once we have a critical number of clients reusing a product or collaborating on a central product, then having forums, boards, so that there's a good say in terms of the vision, roadmap, and mechanism for discussing challenges and opportunities, and helps to realize stronger efficiencies of scale, helps with contributing back or the considerations around contributing back. Just to say, we're not that old. We've been around since late 2024. And over time, we consistently mature. I think a lot of that is due to demand from our clients around open source solutions. It also has to do with um, the way that our leadership sees strategic use of open source. And also, it takes some credit, open source socialization and kind of creating a momentum within UNICC. Although I have to tell you, it wasn't that hard. We already have a lot of technologists that are really interested, actively using, very mature practitioners around open solutions. So I think probably some other organizations have a harder time. For me, it was a momentum of the willing. And folks who maybe didn't have so much experience, a lot reached out with curiosity, which is really, really heartwarming to see that people are very interested in looking to the future of constructs of autonomy and digital sovereignty and empowerment and more diverse ability to access solutions, particularly around compute, AI. There's a lot of curiousness and sensitivity of the community around these things. So I think like many OSPOs, I won't even say like UN entities, but probably I would guess that this is something that, you know, especially in the opportunities area, is maybe you could provide me some advice, or maybe you've experienced some of these things yourselves. But you know, we have some clear strengths, and I think that's been an asset for us to move as far as we can so far. Oops. But in the opportunities area, which I tend to focus on in the context of this community, because maybe I'm also looking for your insights and your ideas around kind of cataloging, baseline, tracking open source maturity across UNICC. We've done some surveys. That's helpful. Have some constructs for software bill of materials, but we're a bit new, but it's also kind of a challenge to get scalable and repeatable diagnostics. And also, maybe because we've only run a couple surveys and we haven't been able to benchmark or baseline really strongly, what questions have been used for this process in the past, to be able to really gauge kind of um, biannual maturity and see that more clearly. We also, you know, for us, we're central quarters within UNICC, but we don't necessarily have a full living inventory. And so good tooling for that living inventory across UNICC could be very supportive. Some aspects of DevSecOps are already in place. Actually, we're doing pretty well at using that at scale, but still the living inventory and especially the expertise map is something that we're working with our HR to put tooling in place to have professionals be able to tell us what their open source expertise is. In the past, it wasn't explained the same way. And now we're looking at that from a skills analysis point of view. But still, any things that have worked, I'm very open to advice. Scaling internal enablement. We've done some kind of essentials trainings, but especially for more advanced practitioners, things that have worked to engage those practitioners around more than just getting involved in specific open source communities that are aligned to their interest and their expertise. And we want to support and help grow digital public goods ecosystem, particularly in our work with Digital Public Goods Alliance and the open source communities that are around them. So things that have worked well, things that you have seen in terms of community recognition, specifically around digital public infrastructure and goods, and kind of creating momentum. And then we've come a long way in terms of productization, but we're always looking for advice to help sharpen and to help us tune what works in terms of market positioning and messaging around open source products. Um, we have some lessons, and also really open to, inputs from the community. I suppose some aspects of these learnings in looking at some of the, you know, broad maturity challenges and opportunities in OSPOs widely. Um, and so, yeah, the practical support examples and safety faults become really important. Uh, Looking at reusing first. I think that's also something that we try to evangelize, but in practice, sometimes reusing first can be a bit difficult. Or once we get into reusability, then we think, it probably would have been faster or easier, especially with AI capabilities to build this from scratch. But both reusing of internal existing open source components or internal libraries, reusable components, such. Um, Yeah, I think for us, like the documentation governance engagement and really like the education around that is something that we want to build in. It's part of our policy to look at those things because somehow being a UN entity and bringing projects open source, we want to have the possibility to share good documentation and good engagement with um, folks. And yeah, I think probably one of the biggest challenges is just what I mean, I see this broadly in the UN for the open source projects that the UN has is that, and I guess it's not dissimilar to open source as a whole, but the community building aspect is still something. How to do that effectively with limited resources is is quite a challenge. Um, So next, I would invite collaboration opportunities with the community. Um, yeah, I'm really interested in one of the reasons I had contacted Curious is because I was really interested in cross OSPO exchanges, particularly the patterns. That was really interesting, and I'm grateful to the community for having done such patterning exercises. I think that there's probably some things for UNICC OSPO to learn from that. Um, General guidance on, if this is something that you've built up, but open source in public sector and multilateral or academic institution context, things that any kind of things that have worked, things that have not worked, any kind of practical guidance that can be shared, I'm very grateful for and would also be open to sharing from our fairly brief experience in UNICC OSPO. Um, Generally, external partnerships to work on opportunities and synergies um, can be better awareness, institutional or academic-led open source projects. Some of our challenges can be finding relevant projects at times. And so, just building a community, understanding what's out there a bit better, looking at opportunities and synergies for building together in a specific trajectory could be interesting. And then, of course, events, collaboration, hackathons, open source evangelism type of things. And last but certainly not least, I think internship opportunities can be quite interesting. UNICC does offer internship opportunities, and so can be for interns to work alongside key professionals in UNICC and any of our domains and grow and learn and provide benefit back to the community at the same time. A really great opportunity for true synergy.